Too often, well-intentioned projects to improve education get started in the wrong place, sometimes beginning with a focus on an exciting new technology, leveraging a new reform effort, or trying out some new pedagogy in the classroom. But any meaningful effort to improve learning needs to begin with a central focus and needs to maintain that focus on the learner. To that end, our California Learning Lab project begins with a focus on vulnerable STEM learners and asks, how can we improve learning outcomes for this population? Answering this question is going to demand a larger community that's going to be engaging in authentic research. And to that end, our project brings together a diverse set of collaborators, educators and researchers from Santa Ana College, from the California State University at Fullerton, from the University of California at Berkeley, and from Carnegie Mellon University, and gives them access to some of the leading open and adaptive courseware platforms from the Open Learning Initiative and from Lumen Learning. Our project is built on three core themes. First, we know that open adaptive courseware can be effective in improving learning outcomes, but we also know that that same courseware, when moved to other contexts, isn't always as successful. We recognize the need to customize and to change these materials, the ability to address different instructional practices and learning contexts, but past evidence suggests that these kinds of changes need to be deliberate, they need to be iterative. We also see growing trends in the open education community to move away from disposable, one-shot assignments that don't have larger meaning. And we know that there is an almost unending need for more opportunities for learners to engage in thoughtful, deliberate practice with meaningful feedback. Finally, our third theme is the recognition that experts do not see things in the same way that novices do. And in fact, we might see the process of becoming an expert as creating a new way of seeing. Yet we know that the novice perspective is absolutely essential for understanding and constructing deliberate opportunities for learning. Our project, then, wants to weave together these three strands to facilitate greater participation from educators, from students, and even from everyday people in creating and explaining and improving these learning materials and these learning models. We'll be investigating the impact of this participation and how well it supports California's vulnerable STEM learners. The project starts with existing open adaptive courseware from the Open Learning Initiative from Lumen Learning, specifically focused in courses like chemistry, engineering statics, mathematics, and computer science. These are platforms that provide integrated learning experiences, embedding opportunities for answering questions and getting targeted feedback into a larger problem-solving context. What's important about these platforms as well, they're capturing fundamental information about both learning design and learner interactions. Our project will be adding dashboards and analytics that will make these data more actionable for educators, tools to let them make customizations, changes, and improvements to their courseware in ways that are informed by evidence from past use. But we also need to layer on greater opportunities for students to contribute. We know that greater opportunities for practice can benefit our learners, and we also know that this act of creation and explanation is an exceptionally effective way to support learning. So we'll be exploring the creation of new learning activities that in turn ask students to write new questions, create new explanations, and create new feedback. This will be supporting their own learning, but on the way, it will allow them to create new open artifacts that can be useful elements to include in future course releases. However, we know that the sheer volume of these activities is going to make it difficult to review, to give feedback, and to select the ones that are going to be most useful to add to the course. We also know that expert faculty aren't always in the best position to identify questions that can speak to the novice mindset. So we're also going to be creating mechanisms for other learners, peers, to help evaluate and identify these student-generated activities. This work should be useful for the evaluator in that they're going to be creating their own explanations, but this will also help to sort questions in ways that will let us see what do other learners perceive as more or less effective. And finally, this focus on the learner voice is going to explicitly offer a novice perspective. Beyond creating these new activities, we also want to solicit learner perspectives to try to get a deeper understanding of the underlying learning model that is associated with our courses. So we'll also be creating activities that ask students to explain some of the things that data shows us. For example, past use tells us that activity A is more difficult than activity B. Explain why it's more difficult. Or we know that this sequence of activities was built with an assumption that they focus on a certain skill, but our data suggests additional hidden skills. What skills do you see as a learner that are being taught? We're interested in the role of educators and of students, but we're also curious about whether there's a useful way for the broader public to be involved. So we're going to investigate crowdsourcing. Can the crowdsourcing of new activities and new explanations contribute to better materials and student success? We'll be using Amazon's Mechanical Turk to crowdsource broader population to participate in these same activities. Our core research questions then: do these types of community-sourced contributions to OpenCourseWare improve learning outcomes? What's the impact for students in participating in the creation and improvement of these learning models? And can these student and community voices create better learning models, all in the service of improving outcomes for STEM learners? We recognize, though, that this work doesn't happen in a vacuum, that it needs to happen inside of existing institutions, structures, and cultures. Carnegie Mellon's been fortunate to have a cultural anthropologist lead investigations into the barriers and facilitators of using these technology-enhanced learning resources. And so some of our current approach was designed to leverage that work. And as a final research thrust, we'll be investigating with these new participating institutions how the new community-sourced tools and approaches can improve faculty attitudes, interests, and long-term use of these materials. Overall, we see broad impact from our project, looking at improved outcomes for vulnerable learners, hopefully new insights into the role of student engagement in learning. The project's going to produce and expand additional open adaptive courseware in chemistry, engineering, statistics, computer science, mathematics, and many more courses. These coursewares are produced with an open license that's going to allow them to be used by future California college students. And finally, we hope to gain a clearer understanding of how to sustain participation in useful innovations across different post-secondary contexts in the future. If you're interested in learning more, you can head to oli.cmu.edu/ca-learning lab. We'll give you information on this progress of the project and possibly opportunities for getting involved. And we want to thank the state of California for generously supporting this work.